Welcome to the Woman and Money Empowerment Show. My name is Yulin Lee, and I am your host. In these episodes, you will hear my heart-to-heart conversations with women from all walks of life, sharing their wisdom and their journey to success. I hope through these stories, you will find inspirations and affirmation that ordinary people like you and me, we can achieve extraordinary results and live an extraordinary life. Now, let's dive into today's show. Hello, Laura. Welcome back to the Woman, Money, and Empowerment Show.
Yulin, thank you so much for having me back. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, well, me too, because, you and I, we share a lot of same spirit in how we want to help others, how we want to make a difference in the world. And with you helping other women and clients in building and growing their business, and with me working with women and helping them in their personal finance, I think we share so much in common. But one of those things is about really empowerment. Like, how do we empower others? And ultimately, like you and I, we said before, it's about self-empowerment. So I am so glad that you're back for us to have a deeper dive into this conversation about what does empowerment look like?
Beautiful. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So before we start, and maybe just very quickly again, tell our audience who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Laura Livingston. I'm a mindset and business coach, and I work with people who really have women typically, but not exclusively. But 99% of my clients are women, working with people who have been in business for a little while. They're doing work they love. They've created some sort of foundation, and they're just ready to do whatever the next big thing is for them. I'm really big on fulfillment and defining success your way. So absolutely, we have a lot of money overlap, but we also very much just, I think, want women and people to be and feel empowered in their various areas. And for me, that's in the work that you do in the world. So oftentimes people will come to me when they are going through some sort of change or small or large pivot in their work, and where they just feel like, okay, I did the thing, but also now I want to do this other thing, or now I just want to do the next big step or the next version of their work. And that's really ultimately the work I do. It comes down to, yes, business coaching, but a lot of my training and a lot of my expertise is around mindset and understanding how we as humans operate, and how we can go out into the world and do that in a way that really lights us up. And that's also just really where you and I have so many synergies. And that's why I'm so excited to be talking about empowerment today.
Yeah. And, the word that you said earlier, next version, and it just reminded me, like, both your work and mine, at the end of the day, it's not just about helping them with their business or helping them with their finances. It's really to help them find the next version of themselves.
100%.
Yeah. So let's talk about empowerment. In your definition, what does that look like?
Oh, I like that question. I think empowerment, I mean, I could probably spend a year trying to define it, but I think it really ultimately comes down to your own personal sense of your power. And I think even the word power has a little bit of a wonky context to it for lots of people, but standing up for yourself, it's taking steps and taking charge of your life, your business, your finances, and your joy. Honestly, I think we have the power. I believe that we can create whatever we want. Sometimes that, all the time, that requires us to dig deep, into who we are and where our, soul power is lying, and really tap into that. Because I think we're all very powerful, capable of really anything. And it's just about tapping into that. How do you define empowerment? I'm curious.
Yeah, I similar to what you said, but I want to just pick out, the one thing that you mentioned, which is, empowerment, the within that word, the word power. That actually plays a very huge influential role in the realm of money and finance. That for many women, feeling power in the context of money and finance, that could be a very intimidating thought to them.
Right.
And so yeah, so I think it's empowerment as it relates to money and finance. There's so much layer in within that to become self-empowered. And I think that's why, we are having this conversation today, because for me, if I had to define what is empowerment or self-empowerment, it comes down to self-advocacy, that we need to be able to advocate for ourselves, for our rights, for our well-beings, for our own financial future. And so when we have the power to step up and self-advocate, that is empowerment.
What does it look like to you? You're such a money expert. You're also an empowerment expert. What does it look like to you when you think about what women are dealing with, what challenges they're dealing with related to money and finance? How do you see that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, money is such an interesting topic. It's not like other topics that we learn in school.
Right.
There's a knowledge base, and you learn it, you can go practice it. Money is something that, number one, we don't learn in school, historically, and it is so emotionally charged. And so there's so many layers in how we deal with money in our day-to-day lives. But some of the most common challenges that I see are, number one, no matter where you are in the world, most girls grow up being brainwashed with the idea of, money is a man's job. Your role is to take care of the kids, take care of the family, and your goal as you go into adulthood is to find a good man who can, make the money and take care of the family and provide for the whole family. And then your role is to take care of the household stuff. Now, in the past, that may have worked, but we know we're now living in the world that is changing so fast, that is so different from what it used to be. So that model doesn't work for most couples anymore. But at the same time, because girls and women, we have been so ingrained with this idea of money is a man's job, the result of that is most women, we've never developed this self-identity as someone who can be good, who can be in charge of money. So that in itself, creates this self-doubt. Because again, if you can't see yourself being something or do something, how can you be good at it? Right.
Yeah.
So that
and
is
the word you just used, self-identity, I think is so, to use the word, powerful. When we identify ourselves in a certain way, even if it's just, like I even think about, because I've lived a very non-traditional lifestyle. I'm in my 40s and I've never been married, and I've always been the only breadwinner. And I have way more models now, to be fully clear of how far we have come since I've been around, but we have way more models now of successful women. But, my dad was the primary breadwinner growing up, and I was kind of the weirdo, like being the single breadwinner, climbing the corporate ladder back in my former career. And that identity, I was very strong. I'm always very strong and independent. And I think I am absolutely empowered myself. But then there was this conditioning right in the back of my mind of like, well, you can't expect yourself to do it quite, as well as whether I was making the money or not, to be as good with money as men. There was always something back there in the back of my mind. And that comes back to your point about how are we self-identifying as women,
right,
related to our money and finances.
Right.
And it wasn't even about the money coming in. It was just about the money that I had. What am I doing with it? And am I good with the money that I have?
Right.
I've always, I've had to do a lot of work around that. Still am. I think it's a lifelong learning, but
Right.
I'm curious for you, where do you see that self-identity piece playing out with your clients?
Oh, I mean, it's so interesting. Like one example, I once talked to a man about what I do and
Hmm.
about financial coaching, and he said, "Oh, that's great. Yeah, none of us, we learn anything from school." And then, college, didn't learn anything. And then when I got out, I just knew that I had to figure out how to make money, how to da 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 da. And I just that really hit me
Yeah.
because here's a man talking that somehow he's being ingrained in his idea, in his head with the idea that I need to go figure out how to make money because
Yeah.
I'm going to be the breadwinner, right?
That's my job. Yeah.
That's my job. Versus women was not like that. It was more about, hey, go find yourself a good man who can provide for you.
Hmm.
And an example of that, even just today, a couple of weeks ago, I was in Thailand vacationing with my family. This guy at our hotel who, arranged tours and for us, he handed a flyer to my husband and say, "Hey, we also do cooking classes, to learn how to cook Thai food." And he said, "Well, maybe you can sign this up for your wife, and then so he can learn how to cook and for to cook for you, so she can cook for you."
Yeah.
And my husband looked at him. He goes, "I cook for her."
Yes. My partner cooks for me too. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but again, it's such a, kind of a small casual
It's
exchange, but it's again, it's a reflection of how most people in this world are still viewing, cooking
Mhm.
is the woman's role,
Yep.
right? That's my job is to feed the men, to feed the
Yep.
kids, right? And then for the men to go out. So
Yep.
yeah, so that I see that every day. I mean, even today, even for women who at the conscious level
Mhm.
understand the financial independence, understand that we need to have the parity in everything, but deep down
Mhm.
though, it is so ingrained that sometimes, it's at the subconscious level that we don't even know we're doing it.
Absolutely. You go to a restaurant and my boyfriend is always given the check.
Yeah.
Always.
Mhm.
They always give the check to him, right?
Right.
And okay, like sometimes I'm paying. So but
Right.
to your point, it's these tiny little things that are actually not that tiny. They're just a representation of where
Well,
we are as a culture, as as humanity at this point.
right. I mean, it's these tiny things, but there are so many of them, and then
There's so many.
that's what creates these unspoken rules and which at the end influence our self identity. Like we talked about.
Yeah.
So that is one common challenge that I see
Hmm.
for many women is that they just don't see themselves as someone who can be capable with or should be in charge of money.
Yep.
And then the second thing is this misconception that you have to be good at math to be good at
Hmm.
money. And the reason I say that is because I often hear women would tell me, "Oh, I'm so bad with money." And then they would follow with a supporting fact.
Yeah.
And then they would say, I was never good in math in school.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, so there's a correlation there that because they were not good at math in school, therefore they cannot be good with money. So it seems like it's such a natural evolution. Well, because I wasn't good, therefore I can't be good with money. And that
I really never thought about that. I really like this is a blind spot for me. I really never thought about because I definitely my mother was actually a math teacher, but
Mhm.
I always struggled with math.
Mm.
And I mean now I'm gonna have to go do some thinking, but like I've always been sort of this self-proclaimed not good at math person. I wonder what thoughts I have had in the back of my mind around the correlation between those two things going together.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
really interesting to me.
Yeah,
That's really
yeah,
interesting. And
yeah.
women
I've heard that many times.
especially now I think we're doing a much better job in schools of educating girls around science and math, but that was just that alone was a very different planet when at
Mhm.
least when I was coming along.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I actually hear that a lot,
that
and
is fascinating.
yeah, it's a very
Hmm.
interesting correlation that people make, and which may or may not even be true, right? And
Right?
actually, I
Yeah.
know it's not true because when we talk about money in our day-to-day life. We're not talking about trigonometry, we're not talking about,
No.
even geometry. We're just talking about simple arithmetics,
Yeah.
right?
And we have
And
calculators on our phones.
right,
So,
right.
it's not, yeah.
So that's another
It's
common
interesting.
um common thoughts that then creates challenges for people, right?
And
Because
it creates part
that's
of their
how
identity, right? If I'm not
yeah,
good at math, then that must mean I'm not good at.
so therefore we now unknowingly create a barrier for ourselves.
Mhm.
So that's another challenge
And
that
a limitation.
right. And then the third one is more in the realm of, shame and embarrassment. I see so much of that in women around
Mhm.
money and finance. And I have to say this, for men, I think it's probably ratio percentage wise is probably similar, although I don't have, the actual numbers about,
Mhm.
the percentage of men who is really good at managing money versus, not.
Yeah.
But I don't see or I don't hear much embarrassment about not being good at money from men. And they're like, okay, whatever, I do this, I do that. There doesn't seem to be as much of an emotional attachment to
Mhm.
the state of their being. And so for women, because of the lack of training in school, lack of education,
Mhm.
just like men, right? Because we just don't get that kind of education in
No,
school. But
no,
then
we
on
don't.
top of that, with the conditioning that we've had, it's not even our job anyway. And
Right.
so therefore we're not good. And so therefore in the adulthood, when they run into cases where maybe they're talking to a financial professional, whether they're dealing with some things in their life that maybe they don't understand,
Mhm.
they would be too embarrassed to ask questions.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, I've seen cases where they pretend they understood what the other person said and they
Yeah.
just let it slide,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm too embarrassed to say, hey, you know what? I didn't get what you just said. Can you repeat that? Right. And
And I
so,
think back to your point about the education, sometimes, so I live in Honduras and I do speak Spanish, but there are times when I swear, like, I'll be honest, sometimes people say things to me in Spanish and I'm like, I did not get that, but I just go, uh-huh. And like, just because I'm just moving on. But I think sometimes you don't even know what to even ask other than, to your point, I did not get what you just said. But it's almost like, but the where you start, you're the starting point of that sentence you just said, I didn't even know what that meant, right? Like you're assuming I know X and I'm like X minus one, to use math terms. Like I need you to get me to X so that we can then go from here. And I think not even having the education and the confidence to even articulate a question to say, I don't know what that means,
mhm.
is embarrassing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
And
really embarrassing
right.
when you're trying to take, even if you're trying to take charge of your finances, right?
Right.
That can be really, yeah, and the shame around that, shame makes us quiet.
And again, this is where, empowerment comes into play, right?
Yeah.
If we find ourselves in these situations where, whether we are talking to a financial professional, or whether we're talking to somebody else, negotiating, whatever that may be, to feel the power in yourself to raise your hand and say, I did not understand what you just said. Can you repeat it?
Mm-hmm.
That could be very, very intimidating. That's a huge step
Yeah.
for many women.
Yeah.
And the consequence of that, and I think it's particularly in finance, is that when you let it go, it may be thousands of dollars that you've just missed or lost,
Or
because
worse, or
yeah,
more. Yeah.
it could be a huge loss
Mhm.
and makes a huge financial difference in your well-being by not asking the question, right?
Yeah.
So again, that's another area where I see a lot of women having challenges, and that also comes into play or show up in, women going through a divorce.
Yeah.
In that they're too embarrassed to talk about their failed marriage, and then they are too embarrassed to talk about their now new financial state of being because she hasn't been making money. He's been making the money. He's been controlling all the money. And now I'm in this really, really shitty situation, and I am just embarrassed to even talk about it. And the problem with that is they're just, when you don't speak up, you're just not getting the support that you need.
Which is further disempowering, right?
That's right.
It just adds an extra layer of feeling like you're not in charge of your own life.
That's right.
Much less your finances. If it's sort of, I feel like that they all just add layers to that feeling of just zero control, zero charge, and no power to change the circumstances or to even understand the circumstances.
Right. Another one, but I do want to bring up is the fact that money is a very emotionally charged thing. And that is often based on your life experiences and your relationship with others, your family, your friends. And so it becomes really difficult to really learn and master the same way that you do with other subject, right? Let's say if you learn in geography, if you learn history, a lot of those are knowledge based. And so if you study and if you, even just with math, if you practice how to do the equations over time, you just get good at it.
Yeah.
Whereas money, there is a technical aspect of it, right? There's making money, budgeting and investing. There's technical aspect of how to do all those things. But then there's the most important component to the money is your emotions and your psychology and your relationship to money.
Yeah.
So that's why money is a very different subject from, any other thing that you learn in school. And so, whenever emotions are involved, and that's very difficult, a lot of times for ourselves to try to resolve whatever issue that we have, because we are too emotionally invested, and also because we have so much blind spots. So to answer your question, how does empowerment come into play in terms of challenges with those, with people?
What do we do?
With each of these things, we need to, how do we apply the empowerment into these areas and into these challenges, right?
Because just to be clear, I think what you're saying is this is the antidote, right? There's all kinds of ways that we can to improve our financial situation, but you and I have had a conversation separately about it doesn't even matter how much money you're making if you're not appropriately allocating the money that you have, you're still dealing with an issue with money. So how do we tap into that empowerment? How do we sort of take charge of our finances?
Right. So, it comes down to what I mentioned earlier. It's really about self-advocacy, that we have to decide for ourselves that we are the only person, we're the best person to advocate for ourselves in our lives, because we are the one who is most interested in our well-being, just in general overall. And so it comes down to self-advocacy. So what does that look like? Well, number one, you have to first acknowledge where you're at. And so, and that means getting to understanding yourself. Are you someone who often worry about money? Do you always get stressed around money? Or are you someone who prefer actually not to think about money and actually want to have someone in your life to just deal with it, right?
Yeah. I don't want to deal.
Right. Because I hear so many women said that when they were single, I had to deal with it because I'm single. There's no one else to do it. But boy, as soon as I got married, I am so glad there's someone else who can take care of it and I don't have to deal with it. Right. And what they don't realize is that they, just by making that decision, you've now put yourself in a very vulnerable position in terms of your own financial future. Absolutely. And so it's acknowledging, if that's your state of mind, then maybe there's some work to do in that area. Or, maybe you're someone who is making money. Maybe you're single, maybe you're successful. I've actually worked with a lot of successful businesswomen. They are successful in making money because they're good at what they do. So they're able to make that the income that they can command. But at the same time, their success in their business doesn't necessarily give them the sense of peace and security about their financial future. They still feel like,
Yep.
I don't know whether I can retire, or I don't know how and I'm going to retire, and I don't know what is really going to be when I retire, even though I've been making money all these years. And so, that's another, self-awareness, right? If you are in that camp, then there's some work to be done. And the work is actually to acknowledge the fact that money has multiple facets in our lives. How money shows up in our life has multiple facets, right? One facet is making money.
Yeah.
And so if you're good at making money, that tells me you're good at what you do. The services that you provide, the products that you sell, you are good at what you do, therefore you are able to make money. But that's just the first step, right? Once you make money, how do you spend your money? And then how do you invest the money that's, from your savings? Those are the other two aspects maybe you haven't looked at, right? And so that's the part of the financial literacy most people need to have is your financial well-being doesn't just rely on how much money you make. You need to round it out with, am I spending wisely? Am I spending within, in alignment with my values and my goals? And then also, what am I doing with all the savings that I have? Am I investing my money smartly? And am I investing that's also in alignment with my values and goals? And so we need to round out these three different things to actually achieve financial peace, financial freedom. And so that's another area where people sometimes they don't recognize it. Again, that's they haven't really done the work to take a step back and say, okay, how would I grade myself in the realm of, money and finance? I've done great in making money, but then I still haven't done the other two steps. So those are just examples of acknowledging where I am today as a person, and then also where I am today with my finances. And by doing that, you can identify where are the areas that need additional work.
Which I think, like, the word I kind of want to use to describe that is thriving. There's something more, to your point, to round out that circle, to look at thriving and to look at creating a healthy relationship with money, even if you have tons of it. If you're, to your point, if you're avoiding it or if you're outsourcing it, there's something there that you're kind of missing. And to complete that circle is empowering, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, the first step is knowing, who you are and where you are. And then the second step is second step to this empowerment is, to once you identify where the holes are, where you need extra work, then that's when you to take actions and get additional support and get accountability support, because like I said, money is one of those things where it's so emotionally charged. And that
lots of blind spots too.
Yeah. And that's why it, really warrants to get a coach or somebody else to help you, to tell you where your blind spots are, to reflect back to you, to mirror back to you about what you want and what you're doing. Because sometimes we can't see it clearly ourselves because we are human, and it happens to all.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's,
none of us can see what we can't see. How do you work with, because I know you offer one-on-one support for your clients. What does that look like when somebody comes to you and says, okay, Yulin, I'm ready to look at what we got here?
Right. So, everybody comes in with different setup problem on the surface. But it really comes, over the years, I've realized they all follow kind of very similar patterns. First, I would do an evaluation of, their relationship to money. And most of them do have some issues or challenges with relationship to money, because that's usually the cause of all the, challenges that we have. But some people are not. Some people are really, they've done the work themselves, and maybe they are, they did grow up in an environment where, their parents were, empowering them and supporting them to have that new identity of they can be good with money or they can be in charge with their money. So there are, it's a small percentage of women that I work with. They actually have a very good, healthy relationship with money. And so then it's really about, okay, so what are you looking for at the moment? Some of them, they would say, well, I really need help on, learning how to invest my money so I can create that financial future for me. So it's about identifying their needs. And then the majority of the clients that come to me, they do have a lot of issue with, with their relationship to money. And so if that's the case, then, my work starts with helping them to understand their relationship, exactly what it is, and then also how to reframe those whatever stories that they may have had in their head all their lives, right? And so it's understanding it, reframing it, and then practicing it. Because just by having that knowledge, you could make that shift at the moment, but oftentimes the old thinking still comes back. Because again, you've been living with it for the last 40, 50 years. So the reality is you don't completely change for good, with that one shift. But it is that shift, though, that's the beginning of a new possibility, right? And so it's identifying their relationship, helping them to learn how to reframe those thoughts when they come up. And then also at the same time, working through their finances, looking at what's coming in, what's going out, how much are you saving, and what are you doing with your savings, and what are your goals? What are the specific numbers that we need to achieve? It's a combination of doing all that work together. And so sometimes you do the mindset work, they're like, oh yeah, I got it. I have this new reframed image or a story. But then when you're actually doing the work, this old thought pops up.
It pops up. Oh yeah.
Pops up. Yeah. But then because we've done the work, before that, we can say, okay, well, now let's remember how to reframe this. And it's really through this practice that they now started to really take on this new identity for themselves, right? With the new story. And then at the end of the day, working with them, it's about helping them to get clarity on what they want, getting clarity on where they're at, what they want, and then how do we get there? And that's about creating a path, creating strategies and action steps for them to move in that direction.
I love that because obviously, because we work very similarly, but I do the same thing with my clients in a different component. But I think, it's really important. Mindset work is so important because when you miss that, you're just going to keep taking the same repeatable actions and have complete blind spots around, why you're doing that, or even that you maybe could take a different action. But when we only do action, then we're sort of missing the mindset piece. And when we can tackle it from both directions, that's what I do as well. I find it really it is so empowering, to use our word of the day, but also it really works because you're hitting it from every angle and you're really changing habits across the board. It's the same habit in some ways, but it's you're changing it at all levels, and it really works. So I love that's what you do. I fully believe in that approach.
Yeah.
So I know that you can't serve every woman on the planet one-on-one, but I know you've got like a book out, and I know you have some other places where people can learn from you, including, just listening to this podcast. So where else can people get support from you?
Yeah. So, my book was launched last year, and it's called Unleashed. Tapping into your feminine instinct to create your financial independence. And that is a book about 5 different women's story. And the intention of that book is to help people to awaken to, what's possible. For my intention is for readers to read these stories and say, oh my God, that's me. With one of the characters. And then from that, they get inspirations and motivation to actually take action to do something different going forward, as opposed to just staying in this hamster wheel. And then in addition to the book, people can find me on social media. I'm on, Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, and also my website. And this show, I think what's really, really important that I want everyone to kind of remember is to make sure you build a team around you.
Mm.
And I'm talking about, a team in the for the finances, but that probably applies to everywhere else in your life as well. And so when it comes to finances, build a team with, a CPA, with a financial advisor, and maybe a coach and a tax person and an attorney, so when you build a team around you and make sure that they all know each other and they work together for you, that's the best way to set yourself up. Because if you think about it, what do the ultra rich do?
Mm-hmm.
They have a family office. And what does a family office do? Well, they hire all the top-notch people in all these different areas to serve them, right?
Yeah.
We can do that for ourselves
Yeah.
by building a team around us. And I think that's one of the big takeaway that I want everyone listen to this is, if you don't have a team around you with all these financial experts, then that's probably the one step you want to do, after.
I love that too, because we were talking earlier about, outsourcing it, right, to a husband or whoever. And I think this is, the healthier version of that, right? Oh, okay, I know I'm not like the best, at money. Great. I can learn, right? And all the things that we've just talked about, I can empower myself. And I also don't have to become a money expert and be Yulin and be a financial advisor to also have a healthy relationship with money and to be financially free. And then I can just, from an empowered space, bring on the right team to support me. I love that.
Absolutely. I mean, being in charge of your money doesn't mean you have to do everything yourself, but
or
you
know
do have
everything.
to be that. But you do have to be that CFO to go out and hire the right people for your team.
Absolutely. I love how empowering that is.
So, well, it's been such a great conversation with you. I love, the topic of empowerment, and I wish everyone who listened to this to really take a deeper look at how they're doing right now in their personal life, and it could be in their, financial life or other areas of life, and say, do I feel empowered in pursuing whatever I want to pursue? And if not, then maybe this show is the catalyst for you to take action, to look into what can you do to be more to be doing more self-advocating for yourself.
I hope so. This work is so important, and I'm so happy that you're doing it in the world.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for this
Thank
conversation.
you.
Again, we we can talk on and on and on, but I hope our conversation can give our audience some ideas of maybe it's a wake-up call for them. Maybe it gave them some ideas of where they need to look into in terms of work, and then also where to get help.
And there's always something you can do. There's always something you can do.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you so much. Talk again.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Women and Money Empowerment Show. If you ever have doubtful moments about yourself, your capability, or your worthiness, please remember to keep coming back to these stories and lean in. Draw the wisdom and strength from these incredible women, and know that you also have what it takes to live a fulfilling life. Until next time, have a fabulous day.